So sorry if your name isn't appearing on screen with the notification. It should be. It was working yesterday. Maybe Night Dev is having problems. You guys that saw me working with those columns when I was working with the garden terrace, when I was having problems doing the chamfer on the edges, saw me look at this modifier I'm going to look at here. I can remember where it is. I think it's quadify mesh. Yeah, this one here. And what that does is throws a quad mesh over the entire model. I'm going to throw that on there initially because that will fix usually those problems that I'm having with beveling the edges. Now I know this is too high a poly to take in, for something like this to take into a game engine, but we can fix that after the fact. So let's throw down an edit poly on top of that. Go back into our edge mode. Now I won't be able to use my selection because throwing that quadify mesh on top of it has destroyed my selection there. So, but I should be able to reselect again. No. Yeah, and this is a problem sometimes with the quadify mesh too. It won't let me loop or ring. I'm actually going to have to do this a bit by hand, but before I do that I'm going to make sure that I can actually chamfer those edges before I select everything. And a bit of a problem still happening there. Let's do another reset X form on it. Let's make sure that our axis is actually in the center of the object. Do another edit poly. You can have as many of these modifiers and max as you want. Let's try chamfer again now. Yeah, no, it's having a real problem with this geometry for some reason. I wonder if it's because the mesh is not attached. Let's have a look at that. Let's go into vertex mode here, and I want to select my verts here and make sure they're welded. I'm going to pull that right up to make sure that it is welding them together. And in fact, before we do that, let's go back to our original mesh, and I can do that just by turning off these objects in my modifier stack. So back down to the original edit poly here on the bottom. And again, let's go into vertex mode. It's going to be, there are fewer verts for me to select on the base mesh. No problems, Westigate. Thank you again for popping in. Thank you again for following me on Twitch. I stream on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, US time at 5 PM. So after today, I'll be back on Monday next week. But thanks for popping in. Thanks for popping into chat as well. So let's weld these verts in case that's the problem that it's having. If the vertices aren't welded together, when you try and do a chamfer, it's going to pull the mesh apart, so that could very well be the problem. We'll find out soon enough. Although I don't know why the verts wouldn't be welded. There's no reason I wouldn't have welded them. Again, let's do the ones on the inside as well. Let's try selecting an edge and see if it'll if we can do it or not. Let's try chamfering that edge. And that's why I don't like to use the chamfer command in the modify in the edit poly, because it's the old version that doesn't create proper edges for you. But that looks okay, so I'm just going to exit out of that and look at the top one here and see if that one works properly. Exit out of that. Let's select these edges here on the top and the side. To make sure I do have the right edge selected. Yep. Let's try throwing that modifier on top here. Even though it's underneath, it's at the bottom of our stack, it shouldn't make a difference. Okay, and you see, I think it's working properly now. Come on. Let's have a look here. Yeah, now it's working correctly. It looked like the problem was the verts weren't welded together, and then throwing a chamfer on top of an edge that's not welded will split the edge apart with no poly in the middle. So it can't create that chamfered edge if the vertices are not welded together on either end. It doesn't know what to do. Now normally I would say to you guys, when you're smoothing up these edges, go higher than one segment. I usually, when I'm exporting a model to take it into a rendering program like V-Ray or Vue, will tell you to go to about six segments. But because this is a game model, I don't suggest you go higher than maybe 2, 3 at max. I just want a smoother edge on that, not a huge chamfer, just a soft one. And I can get that. I get more control using this modifier than I get through the edit poly as well. Now, what I'm going to do is I have my settings here that I like. Let's just see if a standard would work better than a quad. Because this isn't a quad mesh, this is a triangulated mesh. So using a quad chamfer is probably not really going to benefit much, but we'll have a look. And it's to do with this edge here. It's how it handles the edge of the chamfer. The difference between a quad and a standard. We may leave it on quad, but now that I have my settings the way I like them, I'm going to turn that modifier off. And I'm going to jump back down to the bottom of my stack. I'm going to make sure I select all the other edges now, and then before I turn my modifier back on. So again, I hold down the control key so I can select these new edges. I think did I miss the one on the inner edge here? Let's double check we have them all selected. I think we do. Again, let's make a selection here, save our selection set. Just in case we want to come back to it at some stage. Now let's jump back up to our quad. And turn it on, and that'll apply those settings to all the edges we just selected to soften them up a bit. It's subtle and it's small. I may go a bit higher actually. Yeah, we'll go up to about 1.42 centimeters to soften those edges up. Now that we worked out the problem, it was the vertices not being welded, we can remove these modifiers from above that stack, because we don't need them now. So let's go out of edge basis mode for a moment so I can get a better look at the model. Let's just soften the edge up a little bit, should have anyway. Yeah. We don't have one on the back because the back faces the wall. We just added a bit of a soft edge to those hard edges there. Only with 2 segments though, so that we don't push the poly count too high. Because chamfering any edge is going to increase your polygon count. Alright. I'm just going to deselect my... actually no, I'm not. I'm going to collapse my stack here, now that we've got our chamfer done. Alright, the next thing we want to do here, because we want to take this piece of geometry into Mari at a later date to fix the texturing on it, make it look nicer than it is. We're going to do the same thing we did before by doing a render to texture, but before we can do that we've got to do an unwrap. So throw an unwrap UVW on, make sure we're in map channel 2. We'll just move the UVs across. It makes no difference if you say abandon because we're going to be re-UVing it anyway. Again, let's open up our UVW editor. Make sure we select all of our UVs. And do a flatten mapping. Now the default values are generally quite fine for flatten mapping in Mac. And we'll just flatten it out and pack it for us. Okay. Now we're going to do a render to texture again. And again, we're going to make sure we use existing channel 2. Again, we're going to add a diffuse map. Now for this panel, I'm going to do 1024 texture. So 1024 by 1024. It is something you're going to be able to get close to in the level, and it's also quite a large piece of geometry as far as the... remember, we're going to be instancing this as well. So we could use a higher poly asset and also a higher resolution texture because we're instancing it in the level. But 1024 should be fine. You know what? Let's go 2048. We can always reduce it later on. Again, I always recommend rendering out larger than you may need because then you can reduce the size without losing any detail, as opposed to having it too small and then trying to make it bigger. You're going to lose detail that way. So we'll make it 2048, and if when we bring it into the engine we think it doesn't need to be that big, we can reduce it to 1024. Let's save it into our folder here. Deco model. Again, we're going to save it as a Targa because, hey, we've been using Targa. I'm going to call this panel inner plane. 24-bit again is fine, we're not using an alpha map. So we have channel 2, we're using a diffuse map, we've set our texture there, let's do a render. Again, we're going to be overpainting this texture, but I like to bring a textured model into Mari because it helps me see the actual model itself when you actually import it into Mari to paint over the top of it. If you've got a texture on the base, you'll find it easier then to see the model and to paint over the top of it. Alright, we've rendered our texture out. Let's make sure it's in our materials here so it's ready to go. What did I call it? I think it's panel in a plane, that's it there. I couldn't remember for a minute what I'd called the texture. Let's make sure we show shaded and show realistic so that when we do assign it to the model we can see it in the viewport. We're not going to assign it just yet. We're going to go back into our utilities tab and into our channel info. We're going to do the same thing again. We're going to copy the UVs from channel 2 into channel 1. And we're going to clear channel 2. Now we're going to assign the texture to the model to bring it back to the way it was. So now our model is good to go as far as texturing in Mari goes. So let's just collapse our stack and export that piece. What are we calling it again now? Panel, inner, plane. I don't know what's wrong with me today. I'm just going to save it as an OBJ again. I'm also going to change the name of this here. And I keep the object name the same as the texture name, and that way it's going to be easy for me to match the two up later on. Alright, let's exit isolation mode here. Now I'm going to select both of these just so I can change the size of that inner panel. So now I'm going to select the inner panel. I want the inner panel to fill the entire inner part of that frame that's on the inside of the panel. I'm going to do that just by scaling the mesh up here. I want to go to the front viewport so we can see it. Now, instead of scaling it, because scaling can be a bit fiddly sometimes, I'm actually going to go into vertex mode, select my verts here on this side, zoom in so I can see the edge of the frame there, and I'm going to pull it out until it just touches the inner frame. I'm going to do the same on this side. And the same with the, make sure that the top is actually aligned as well, which I think it is. Yep. And the bottom, which I think it is as well. Yep. So just make sure our inner panel sits, looks like it fits within the frame. I don't know why it was a bit shorter before. I think I may have, when I built the original level in the Unreal in UDK, I may have scaled it up in the engine as opposed to doing it here. Doing it here, though, will make your life easier when you jump into the Unreal Engine. I'm also just going to look at how far into the actual frame I'm looking at that is sitting. That should be okay. I'm just going to check the texture on that as well. Make sure it's not glossy. This is like a plaster panel, and generally it's not going to be glossy. It's going to be quite a dull looking texture. So I just wanted to make sure that that there was no gloss on that panel. The reason we're getting shadowing is because I'm in shaded mode here. If I went into consistent colors, we wouldn't get that shadowing happening. And when you're working with texture maps, working in consistent color mode and max is probably better, but I usually like to work in shaded. It gives you a more realistic look. Of course, you can go into realistic mode as well, which is going to throw shadows, which I don't want to do. Not here anyway at the moment. We're not going to export our inner panel because I'm not going to do any texture correction on that. That should be okay. We will be creating normal maps or making sure we have a normal map for it though. This is the sort of thing that will really benefit from a normal map. And we're going to be using NALD to create our normal maps, KNALD. Again, because I can bring my OBJ in and look at it real time while I'm adjusting my normal map. Which is why I suggested that it's probably the best program I've used for creating normal maps. I have used bitmap to material by Algorithmic as well, and it's very good, but I think NALD is a bit better. This object, this sconce here, is something I want to remodel slightly because, again, this is just using flat planes, and I want to model in a bit of this detailing. Now, again, you could get away with probably using a normal map, but again, a normal map, when you look at it in silhouette, is not actually going to give you any depth. It's still going to be flat. And because we're going to have a light here, an actual physical light in Unreal, having some geometry here for the light to hit will add some really nice shadowing work. So this is something that would really benefit from actually modeling in that detail as opposed to just using a normal map. For those reasons, a normal map, looking at its side-on, is going to stay flat, so it's going to look a bit fake. And because it's a light source and we're going to have a physical light in there in the engine, having some geometry will really help to throw some interesting shadows and to pick up on that detail. So that's something we're going to have to work on. I'm going to have to model up some detail into this. It's not a lot of detail, so it's not going to add a lot of polys. It'll add a few, but not a lot. It's not really intricate work. It's pretty basic detailing work here. I'm really only worried about the detailing on the glass part of the model, not down here. I may do something with those two side swirls, but it's mainly these pieces through the middle I want to detail up. Again, these columns, I wanted to soften up the edges on them. Let's do that. I'm going to isolate this selection again, and just before I do that, let's save our file. Again, like I said, guys, I don't trust Macs not to crash. I don't trust any program not to crash, so make sure you save regularly, regardless of what it is you're using. Now let's isolate our selection. Let's start by making sure everything is good here and doing a reset X form on this. Collapse the stack. Again, I'm going to convert it from a mesh to a poly. Let's try, before I look at welding these, this may not need it, so let's see if it needs it or not. I'm going to go into edge mode here. I'm going to go back into edge base mode so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to select a couple of these edges and do a chamfer on it to see if I'm going to have that problem again. It looks like I am. I don't really know why all of these verts are unwelded. That of course means we're going to have to go back into vertex mode here and start welding these together. And you guys that know 3D modeling know you can't just select everything and do well, you can if you're careful. Let's have a look at that. Selecting all your verts to do a weld is generally not recommended because what you're going to end up with is everything in one spot. Like all your verts are going to be welded together in one little dot. But if you're careful when you're doing it, sometimes it can work. So let's have a look. So instead of hitting the weld button, I'm going to open up the dialog. Now you see what I mean by if the weld is too high, all you're going to end up with is a blob. But if we pull back on our weld, and make sure it's not too high. I just want to check that it's not welding these pieces in here together. Okay, now that's nothing welded at all. I'm just going to start dialing this up a little bit until it starts to over weld like that. Now I'm going to start dialing it back like that. So I know that it hasn't welded things together it shouldn't have, but it should be welding anything together that's close enough, that falls within that range of 3.08. So let's accept that. And again, let's do a test on one of our edges here. So they're still selected from the last time we used that the edge mode. So let's throw down a chamfer again. And you see that is it chamfering it up? Yeah. Let me just pull that back and look at what it's doing, and it is actually chamfering that up. So as opposed to selecting all those birds one by one, you can select them all and do a weld, provided you stay below a certain threshold. And the threshold will depend on the actual model that you're welding as well. So you can't just use the standard value. It really does depend on the detail of the model itself. So just to save you time, instead of selecting each vert separately, select them all together and weld them together. It looks like what has happened with this model is at some stage, for some reason, the model has been broken apart. So each vertices has been split. Don't ask me why. Again, this was 6 years ago. I can't remember why it would have done that. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have done that. It's something funny that's happened between Max and I'm not even sure really where I originally made the mod, what program I made the piece in. But regardless, we're probably going to have to do that with most of these model pieces. It looks like all the verts were split. We're going to have to weld them together. But like I said, select everything together, and as long as you stay within that threshold, it should be good. We're going to turn that chamfer off here because we've got to select all the right edges. We haven't done that yet. So let's do that now. No, I don't want that one. I'm also going to ignore back facing here. I don't want to accidentally select an edge on the back, and by turning that on it prevents me from accidentally doing that. And you know, this is the fun part, guys, selecting your edges that you want to chamfer. Don't chamfer an inner edge where it hits the wall like that. That's unnecessary, and it wouldn't be chamfered anyway because it's butt up right against that back piece of the column. You only want to be chamfering the edges, not the back edges. Going to concentrate on the top before I tackle the actual main part of the column. And I'm actually going to turn shaded off and go back into consistent color here while I'm doing this. Again, I'm not going to chamfer these back edges here because they're going to be sitting up against the wall, the back of the wall. But I am going to do these outer edges. I am going to do the edges here along the front. I'm going to do that edge in there. That edge there. Actually, I may not do those. Let me have a look. No, I'm actually not going to do those edges because they're butting up against that piece, so I'm going to deselect those ones. I'm going to do these edges here though. Same thing through the front here. I'm going to do that side edge, not that one, that one, and these front edges. And that side edge just in there. Again, I'm not going to do this back edge because that's again going to be an edge of this column that will be sitting against the wall. I'm not going to do those front edges either, or these side edges, because they're on the inner part of the model. I may do that edge there. Let's have a look. No, I won't do that one either. I do want to do that top edge and that top edge. I will do that top edge and that top edge. Again, I'll do the side here, but I won't do the back. So I won't do that back edge or these inner edges either. And of course I won't be doing that edge in there, and no inner edges, don't do any inner edges, only the outer edges. I'm just going to look over my model here to make sure I have all of my edges selected. I'm not doing that edge again because that's going to be butting up against the wall. I'm not doing that inner edge because that's going to be butting up against the wall. My mistake. I will be doing this edge here, but not that back edge. Okay, we have all the ones along the front. Let's pull in here a bit, and now let's go back up to our chamfer and turn it on. Again, we're using two segments. I'm not putting a huge chamfer on this. I just want to soften the edges up a bit, just make them not quite so hard, not quite so 90 degree. That should be good. So now we can do a collapse all. I can turn off my edge faces and go back into shaded mode. That's just helped to soften that hard edge up a little bit. As far as texturing for this model goes, I'm not sure if I'll do texturing, retexturing or not. What I might do though is select the entire model and go down to auto smooth it. I'll just re-smooth it again because we've made some changes to the geometry, so I want to make sure that the mesh is smooth. The smoothing groups are correct. Right, let's end isolation mode there. Not sure what's going on there with that. Let's just go back to isolation mode for a minute. I'm going to go back in the stack here. Just by going undo, so I can get back to my modifier. Okay. So we still have all of our edges selected. Let's just jump back down to the edit poly at the bottom. Before we did our chamfer, I'm just going to deselect these ones at the front. It looks like that was creating a problem with the mesh, so again I'm going to hold down the Alt key and deselect these edges here in the middle. Okay, now we've still only got all of our outer edges selected. I'm going to jump back up to the chamfer modifier. That all looks fine. Now we're going to collapse the stack. Oh, that's interesting. It's still in the model. Could be the normals doing that. Let's throw a normalized modifier on top of it. Yeah, it was the normals that was the problem. If you notice that shadowing that was happening in the model piece, it was because the normals were messed up. That should be good. Let's let's collapse our stack and end isolation mode. Okay, I think we may leave it there for today, guys. I will be back on Monday next week, and we'll continue looking at the different pieces of geometry for this building before we start taking it into the Unreal Engine. There's a few things, like a few pieces of geometry I want to paint up in Mari. We'll probably do that next week, so we can get everything ready. So I don't want to jump into using the Unreal Engine until we have all of our pieces of geometry all ready to go, so that then we can just export them all at one time from Max. And then we can import them all at one go into the Unreal Engine. So I will be back on again on Monday next week. That's Monday at 5 PM Pacific time in the US. My schedule doesn't change. I stream every Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. So I'll be back on again on Monday next week. I do want to thank you guys for hanging out with me and watching the stream. I do appreciate it. Thank you guys as well that followed my Twitch channel. I really do appreciate that as well. It's the best way to find out where I am with the communities feature at the moment. I do remember though that you can follow my Twitter page at PhilDoes3D if you're not sure when I am going to be live, because I always post 15 minutes before I go live to my Twitter page. But like I said, my schedule doesn't change. I will be back on again at 5 PM on Monday next week. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Again, I've got some work I've got to do for the studio, so my weekend's going to be working. But I hope you guys have a great weekend. I do want to thank you again for hanging out with me and for watching the stream. I will be back on again on Monday next week, and hopefully I'll see you guys then. Take care, guys.